Good morning. Unity just sent out this little magazine entitled The Spirit of Family: Faith, Inspiration, and Healing. It starts like this. In a perfect world, family relationships would be easy for spiritual people. We would simply shower each other with love. But families can be complicated. I'm sure we can all attest to the fact that among family members, friends, neighbors, and work colleagues, there are myriad stress factors and challenges that we have to deal with. Our July theme has been freedom, and I'd like to end this series by discussing three very practical tools that can give us freedom from the suffering and stress that we all encounter with some of those closest to us by blood or proximity. I have found three tools to be some of the most successful in terms of healing and interpersonal relationships. They are a distillation of principles or tools from the Unity, Course of Miracles, and Buddhist teachings. But remember, Unity is all about practical spirituality. These tools are not for your information, they are for your transformation. The first tool we need to get out of our spiritual toolbox in order to get along better with others is self love. It is vital that we love and have compassion for ourselves. No matter what another person's opinion of us is, we must remember that those opinions are their stuff. You are a divine being worthy of love, compassion, and understanding. If you remember that and do it, love, understand, and have compassion for yourself, you won't be nearly as affected by what others say or do in relation to you, because you will know who and what you are: a child of God, divine and worthy. Many of us grew up in families where we were often criticized about the way we looked or acted or believed. Maybe some of that criticism helped us. We learned to brush our teeth, not interrupt, and be cooperative, maybe. But much of the criticism came from those who were dysfunctional and critical due to their stuff. And we bought it. We were young, so we believed that what they said to and about us was true. And we grew up feeling less than, unworthy, defective, not lovable, and we were sad. But now we're older and we need to understand how others' dysfunction made us as children feel defective in some way. We need to rethink the whole thing and realize that we are all lovable and worthy. We shouldn't let someone else's neurotic views and criticism affect us any more than we should believe what they say about our physical shape and size if they need glasses. When they need glasses, we understand that they will see us as distorted. Likewise, if someone sees you as less than the divine being that you are, that needn't affect you. It's their distorted vision, not you, that is the real problem. Their vision, programming, conditioning, chemical brain chemistry, and hearing are not your problem. So, work on loving yourself. And when others are critical, just know that this is their reality and usually has little to do with you. Love yourself. Honor yourself. Be compassionate toward yourself. Then, if somebody criticizes you, you will not be affected in the same way. If you already feel insufficient or unworthy, when someone says something degrading or insulting, it will hurt. So, remind yourself that you are unique, one of a kind, wonderful, and improving by the day. Someone admirable, loved, and cherished. That is the truth of the matter. Maybe you're a diamond in the rough and not yet totally shining, but you're a diamond. Respect, understand, and appreciate your uniqueness. You are so lovable. If you remember that, You will notice what others say, but you'll start seeing their words and actions as their stuff. It's not about you. Sure, you can consider what they say if you feel it will help you grow in the school of life, but you need not be depressed, mad, or sad about what they say. In that case, just be grateful for the information in this school of life. Either way, you win, and their comments need not upset you. So, rule number one, love yourself unconditionally. Then others' negativity will roll off your back, to use an old cliche. Tool number two, notice how you are triggered by what others say or do. This helps you realize it's not what they say or do, it's how you're taking it. Then you don't feel so victimized by the outer world. You gain control of the situation. At Unity, we often say that we create our world with our consciousness. Well, here's a concrete example of the way to do that. Notice your triggers. What exactly does that mean? When we get upset by others, it's not what the others say or do that upsets us, it's how they trigger us. In Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths say that 1, we suffer, 2, there's a cause of suffering, 3, there's an end of suffering, and 4, there's an eightfold path to follow that helps us avoid future suffering. In terms of triggers, I'm talking about the second and third Noble Truths, the cause of suffering and the end of suffering. The cause of suffering is us, our consciousness, our thinking. And the end of suffering is to change our consciousness, our thinking. And one way to do this is to notice how we are triggered by what others say or do. Let's say someone is critical of you. You get mad, sad, or stressed. But it's not what they say that causes you to react. All they've really done is emit sound waves. But the way you perceive, process, and categorize those sound waves is what causes you to suffer. Thus, the real cause of your suffering is you, your triggers, and you have control over that. Let me give you an example. There's someone in my life who is always negative and critical of everyone and everything. It's very stressful for me to waste a half hour a day of my time with a perpetually negative person, but I have no choice at work. Now, no one likes her very much because she is so negative. So it's easy for me to justify being judgmental of her because the outside world reinforces my judgments and negativity. Notice that I am being negative about her negativity. The problem is that it was me who was suffering because of my reaction, not her. So I wanted to do something about it. I knew from a spiritual point of view that I was being negative and suffering. Not only the half-hour day I was forced to be with her, but for hours during the rest of the day when I ruminated about it. I told my spiritual mentor that I was stressed about this person. She was negative toward me and everyone else. I didn't want to be judgy or negative, but I was. Again, just like her. I knew better. It didn't take a 200 spiritual IQ to know that it was me who was suffering. Instant karma. I even owned up to the fact that I was negative and judgy about her being negative and judgy. Here's how the conversation went between me and my spiritual counselor. Maybe this will help you understand triggers. Counselor, what's your problem, Mary Beth? Me, I'm feeling lots of negativity and anger towards Sally. Why? Sally is very negative, judgy, gossipy, and self-centered, and I'm stuck with her incessant negativity every day in a situation at work. I never realized there were so many things and people to get negative about around here. Worse, I realize that I'm as negative and judgy about her negativity as she is about everything and everyone, but I don't seem to be able to quit being judgmental. So, What is really being triggered when she goes on and on about how terrible and incompetent everybody is, Mary Beth? Hmm. Well, I feel out of control. I'm stuck with her. I can't stop her constant criticism about everything and everyone. And I'm always stressed about what she's plotting to do to sabotage my programs and everyone else's. Yes, yes, I feel out of control. I can't control her or the situation. So, it's not so much what she says and does. You're more stressed because you can't control the situation. Does that remind you of any situation that you were in as a child? Yes, it does. I see that it's not Sally that is the problem. It's what she triggers in me, an old memory of being helpless and not being able to stop the constant verbal abuse and manipulation. I couldn't control the situation when I was young, and now I can't control this situation. This triggers my old stress of helplessness and being out of control. Ah, does this information about your triggers help you? Yes. It helps me see how it's not Sally or the outside world that's the problem. It's my triggers, my perceptions that are the problem. And I'm not helpless now or a victim anymore. So, Mary Beth, you see how it's not the outside world that makes you suffer. It's your consciousness, your perception of things based on past situations which you aren't in anymore. Yes, I clearly see how it's all about my consciousness, which creates my reality. Since it's not really about Sally, but what she triggers in me, I am in control because I can deal with me. Thank you so much. Bye. And since that conversation, I've started working with this tool in many situations, and it really has freed me from a lot of stress and suffering. I am constantly reminded of that old song. I believe it was from South Pacific, whatever will be, will be. I just let others be, and I work with myself and my triggers, and I don't feel out of control or stressed by the outside world nearly as much. The Buddhists say that there are 5 steps that happen between the reality out there and our perception of it and cataloging of it as a good or bad thing. That's part of what meditation is about, is to bypass some of those perceptions so that we aren't always projecting our neuroses on the outside world. So, to free ourselves from a lot of our suffering in interpersonal relationships, use the tool of looking at what they are triggering in you. You can rarely control what others do, but you can certainly gain some control over your perceptions. Bottom line, pay attention to how others are triggering you. You can get free of that. And the third tool is prayer. Specifically, ask God to help you see things differently with your Christ vision. The great world class skeptic George Bernard Shaw once said, "Lots of people pray for me, and I have never been the worse for it." He went on to say, "The only valid argument against the practice of prayer is that God knows his own business without my prompting." And that's what I'm talking about. Don't let your ego pray for what it wants. Pray to understand God's business. Pray to see things with your Christ vision so you see accurately and on a higher plane than the one which stresses you and causes you suffering. The traditional way many people pray is that they try to convince God to do things better, our way. Maybe they bargain with God. They exchange some kind of promise in order to get what they want. God, if you help me get this business deal or this mate or this red Lamborghini, I will call old Aunt Janie on her birthday every year from now on, as if we can control God. God isn't Santa Claus. The kind of prayer I'm talking about is a prayer for us to understand deeper principles and wisdom. It is prayer that helps us realize and experience our oneness with God and all life. It starts the movement of God power in us in the way electricity moves when a connection is made. If we allow the connection to be made, the electricity will flow, the lamp will light up, and we will have light in our lives and relationships. We'll see others and our relationships completely differently. This is not the traditional way most people understand prayer. You may have heard the old story about the ship out at sea that was in trouble. The winds were blowing, the sea was flying high, and the ship was being tossed about. A woman found the captain and said to him, "Sir, are we in serious trouble?" He looked at her and said, "Ma'am, I must tell you the truth. Now would be a good time for you to pray." She looked straight at him and said, "Oh my God, has it come to that?" I'm not talking about that last resort kind of prayer. We must think of prayer first, not last. If we do, we will avoid the storms of life and sail through with relative ease. Prayer enables us to deal with others on a different level. Abraham Lincoln is reputed to have told the story of chopping down a tree with an axe. He said, "If I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 6 hours sharpening my axe." He went on to say that most people would spend the entire 8 hours hacking away with a dull axe, but he'd rather have a sharp axe. Prayer is very much like sharpening our axe. It is spending time sharpening the axe, raising our consciousness, and having a connection with God so that no matter what happens throughout the day, we are better able to handle it. Sharpening our axe cuts through to the bottom line of things. It makes a divine connection, and a great power begins to flow through us. All the omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence that is God begins to run through us. Our minds get clearer, and we are able to function better, just like a sharp axe functions better than a dull one. Our anxiety lowers and stress decreases. We're able to function at a much higher rate. We jump paradigms from the earthly level of stress, judgment, and negativity to a higher view of situations. We see things differently. Martin Luther put it this way: "I have so much to do today that I will need to spend another hour on my knees." Basically, that is the point we are speaking of here. Pray to see and deal with things differently with Christ's vision. Unity co-founders Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were so busy setting up Unity Village and helping the myriad people involved that they spent an hour every night sitting in the silence. Prayer is like putting up our spiritual antenna so that it brings in the television frequency we want. God is like a television frequency. It is always there, filling the space, but we have to access the frequency in order to watch the news. A holy man was once asked, "How do you maintain your serenity and peace in the monastery in the face of all the pressures of life around here?" He replied, "I never leave my place of meditation." He didn't mean he sat in meditation all day long because he had a busy monastery to run. He was terribly busy. What he meant was that his inner experience of prayer and meditation, which he found in his time of going within in prayer, was carried with him throughout the day. So the day didn't bother him. Things just went well. The real purpose of prayer and meditation is not the peace, serenity, or control contact we make while we are sitting there with our eyes closed. The real purpose begins when we get up, open our eyes, and go out into the day. That is when we start seeing life and others differently. Dr. Alex Carroll said, "Prayer is the most powerful form of energy that can be generated. The influence of prayer on the human mind and body is as demonstrable as that of secreting glands. As a physician, I have seen men and women, after all other therapy has failed, lifted out of disease and melancholy by the supreme effort of prayer. Prayer is the source of luminous and self generating energy. Prayer gives us the ability to counteract all that we encounter during the day. Our five senses naturally pull us toward this world, to what Jesus, the Buddhists, and the Course of Miracles teachings call the appearances of life. This is why it's so easy to judge in ways like, for example, when it rains, it must be a bad day. We judge by the appearances that Jesus spoke of. Prayer is the power to counteract that pull. It gives us the capacity to go within and stay within the truth of our being and begin to see the outer appearances or illusion, called Maya in the East, more clearly. So maybe it is raining, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a bad day. We owe it to ourselves to pray. Bottom line, when we spend time in prayer, we are better able to withstand the stresses that others cause in us because we start seeing those others and life differently. We see that what they do is primarily their stuff, their stresses, and their unhappiness, and that they are just projecting it onto us. We may even be able to develop compassion for them, as I have for Miss Negativity in my life. She must be miserable, or she wouldn't hate the world and everyone in it so much. So, to stress out less, pray more. Simple, but so profound. These three Buddhist, Christian, and Course of Miracles tools for dealing more easily with interpersonal stress and suffering. 1. Love yourself more so that what others say or do doesn't affect you. You are divine. 2. Watch what others trigger in you. The soft spots, the old hurts and memories. Don't give away your power. You have the power to see what's really happening and deal with it. You're not a helpless little child anymore. You have the power to understand that certain words and images may trigger stress, but it's what's triggered and not the other person that is the problem, and you can deal with your triggers. You take the power. And 3, pray to see the situation differently. Things are rarely what they seem. So pray, watch the triggers in your life, and above all, love yourself. I guarantee that this will start changing your interpersonal relationships. Pray, watch the triggers, and love yourself. It has worked miracles in my life and others whom I've counseled. And remember, these truth lessons aren't for your information. They are for your transformation. So pray, watch your triggers, and love yourself. You deserve it.